Hidden truth revealed. Wife's amazing response to husband's affair at her mother's funeral. Sarah stood at the edge of her mother's grave, the sun shrouded in mist, the air electric with whispered rumors. The small town of Maplewood was known for its tight-knit community, but today it felt different. Hearts were heavy, and the fog seemed to reflect the grief that swirled around her like an unwelcome embrace. She glanced over at the gathered crowd, old friends, neighbors, and strangers alike, all there to support her through the loss of her beloved mother, a woman whose spirit had shaped her very being. Yet beneath that support, an insidious pain clawed at her chest, one that felt far worse than the loss of life itself. Only days before, Sarah had unearthed a betrayal that pierced deeper than any grave could. Her husband, Mark, had betrayed her trust, leaving her not only in a state of mourning for her mother, but lost in a pit of despair over a shattered marriage. She felt the weight of unspoken accusations hanging in the air as she looked at Mark, who stood to one side, his demeanor a mixture of guilt and contention. How could she uphold the facade of a united family during such a tumultuous hour? The morning lingered with anticipation, well-wishers lining up to offer their condolences, while her heart trembled with the knowledge of Mark's secret. At every hug she received, a voice tugged in her mind. What would they think if they knew? As the eulogy drew near, her mind raced. Could she live with the shame while holding in the truth, or did she dare confront him in front of all these people, honoring her mother's spirit of courage? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the flowers adorned her mother's casket, their vibrant colors seemed to mock her as she felt drowned in gray. Memories flooded her, laughing at the kitchen table, mother-daughter road trips, life lessons learned in the embrace of warm hugs. The words spoken about her mother's unwavering love echoed through the chapel, bringing tears to Sarah's eyes. Each statement felt like a reminder of the strength and grace under pressure, an aria of love that fought against bitterness. The eulogy rose and fell, and Sarah battled the raging storm inside her. Anger and sadness collided, each telling her different stories about family and truth. Just perhaps, her mother's spirit was telling her to confront the lies that had crept into her life. Would her mother want her to hide in grief or stand up for herself? Sarah's heart raced, the official, blurry edges of love and betrayal converging. She needed to decide now, and as the congregation watched her every move, she felt the looming tension of the moment. Was she ready to unravel her perfect family facade, allowing hearts to break even further? The silence in the room was thunderous, teetering on the edge of revelation as Sarah prepared to speak, wanting nothing more than authenticity amid sorrow. In that moment of profound stillness, everything hung on her next breath. Would she choose healing or remain shackled in silence? Sarah felt the weight of the world pressing down on her as she stood there, her throat tight with unspoken words. The crowd seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, glances shifting from her to Mark, who looked like a timid child caught in the act of wrongdoing. The murmurs faded into a deafening silence, and suddenly the chapel, once filled with the warmth of shared memories, felt like an icy cage. She inhaled deeply, feeling her chest expand, then exhaled slowly, tasting the bitterness of the moment. Her heart pounded in her ears. The fear of their hidden turbulence collapsing in front of her loved ones was almost paralyzing. But her mother's voice echoed through her mind, clear and unyielding. "Speak your truth, Sarah. That is where you'll find strength." It was as if her mother was there, urging her to embrace the courage that had always defined her. With trembling hands, she clutched the edge of the podium, anchoring herself in that resolve. "What do I do?" she thought, eyes flicking to Mark, whose face was masked with unuttered apologies. A swell of unresolved feelings threatened to consume her, but she could feel the warmth of the gathered souls around her, all rooting for authenticity, understanding their own struggles with love and betrayal. Gathering her thoughts, she finally spoke, her voice breaking the somber air. Today, we gather to celebrate my mother, a woman who taught me the importance of honesty and resilience. Each word ignited a fiery passion in Sarah's core. She believed in family, in love, and in the truth. How can I honor her by hiding? Gasps erupted as the meaning of her words sunk in. A collective understanding swept through the crowd, flaring emotions that ran deep. Some wept quietly, some exchanged knowing glances, while others wore expressions of disbelief. The air was electric as she broke down the walls she had built around her pain. She turned to Mark, the man who had once been her partner in every sense. "You betrayed me right when I needed you the most." The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud darkening a beautiful day. Mark's face paled, shame washing over him, but it didn't show the anger that clawed at Sarah's insides. Instead, she felt a strange sense of relief. "I can't pretend that all is well, not with my mother watching this unfold." Tears brimmed in her eyes, but in that moment of vulnerability, she felt more empowered than ever. "You owe me the truth, Mark, we all do." Mark's expression shifted, and for the first time, he looked vulnerable, as if stripped of a mask worn for too long. The tension in his shoulders softened, and he took a step toward her. "Sarah, stop," she interrupted, her heart racing. It was less about his words now and more about her need to claim her voice. "There's too much at stake anymore." Distant murmurs turned into a wave of whispers. Encouragement and disbelief circulated through the audience, sparking that familiar warmth of empathy. Many had been where she was, seeking to reconcile their truth with that of their loved ones. The congregation seemed to hold its collective breath, electrified by Sarah's revelation. What would happen to her next? Would Mark confess? Would their family be irrevocably split apart? As Sarah took a deep breath, stepping forward into the silence, her heart pounded with both fear and hope. She finally felt she was at a crossroads between vulnerability and strength. There was no going back now. "I deserve to know the truth, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next," but just then, another voice spoke from the crowd, a familiar one that sent a shudder through her bones. "You think it's just Mark who has things to hide?" Her pulse quickened, eyes darting toward the source. Who else, she wondered, was entangled in this web of secrets? The revelations were far from over. And as the weight of her world hung heavy in the air, she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The voice cut through the tense silence like a knife, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She turned, scanning the crowd for the familiar face. It was Linda, her childhood friend, standing boldly with a mix of defiance and sincerity lighting her features. Sarah's heart raced, uncertainty flooding her mind. What could Linda possibly mean? Mark's face tightened, a flicker of panic crossing his eyes as he caught sight of Linda. The air thickened, a strange mix of fear, anger, and desperation coursed through Sarah. "What do you mean, Linda?" Her voice shook, almost pleading. She could feel the way every eye in that chapel turned toward them, and beneath it all, she sensed the cracks forming wider beneath the weight of shared secrets. Linda stepped forward, her resolve unyielding. "You think it's only Mark?" She pressed, her voice stronger now, gaining momentum. "You're right, Sarah. There are echoes of truth that don't just whisper, they scream." Each word was a jolt, igniting the chilled atmosphere. Sarah swallowed hard. "What are you saying?" It felt as if the walls were closing in around her, and the truth she sought felt even more elusive. "You deserve to know the whole picture. I'll never forget what happened last September, that night at the lake when I saw Mark with someone else." The confession hit Sarah like a punch, the very air around her electric with the weight of hidden betrayal. Mark's eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. The murmurs returned, rising like an angry tide, each whisper threatening to pull her under. Sarah was trembling, anger seeping through her disbelief. Suddenly, every moment they shared felt tainted, every memory rewiring itself into something unrecognizable. "Who was it? Who was he with?" Sarah asked, her voice fierce, not allowing fear to overwhelm her. But just as Linda opened her mouth to answer, Mark interjected, his voice raw and urgent. "Don't, Linda," he shouted, the desperation in his plea striking a chord of both fear and defiance in Sarah. The sight of the man she once trusted, so deeply trembling in vulnerability, sent waves of conflicting emotions crashing over her. "You can't keep running from this, Mark. You can't bury the truth anymore." Her fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. It was time for answers, raw and uncensored. The moment had finally arrived. Linda took a deep breath, the weight of her revelation heavy in the air. "It was Mia, your cousin. I saw them together." The weight of her words fell into the room, heavy like a stone, causing ripples in the still water drawn within each heart. Gasps echoed around the chapel, shock coloring the faces of friends and family. It felt like the ground beneath Sarah had shifted, her whole world tilting at this new revelation. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I never wanted you to find out this way, but it's the truth," Linda urged, her voice full of sympathy. But Sarah stayed rooted, her body trembling, eyes blazing with unshed tears. It was a raw wound, yet she felt an undeniable surge of clarity. As Mark stepped toward her, the pleading look in his eyes was a mixture of regret and fear, but she held him at bay with a raised hand. "You've hurt me more than I can begin to explain. But I need to know why?" The question hung heavy between them, echoing back to their once shared dreams for a future together. The crowd leaned in, waiting, watching for Mark's next words. "I didn't think it was real," he faltered, his voice breaking. "It was a mistake, but it happened. I wanted you to be happy, and I thought I could just straighten things out without breaking your heart." He stumbled over his words, desperately searching for redemption in her eyes. But as the truth rattled inside Sarah's mind, the catalyst of her heartbreak, she realized she had to reclaim her narrative. "It's too late for that now, Mark," she said firmly, her feelings a whirlwind. In that moment, clarity dawned like a new horizon. Every betrayal, every hidden truth had led her to understanding her own strength. What would she do with this newfound power? How could she redefine her future among the ashes of their broken promises? And would she keep fighting for a man who had shattered her trust when faced with the darkness of vulnerability? With the specter of her mother's lessons surrounding her, she took a deep breath, realizing the journey ahead was hers alone to navigate. One thing was certain, forgiveness wouldn't come easily, and defining her path from here would demand every ounce of courage she could muster. As she looked out at the crowd, her heart pounded with the urgency of the truth. "This is only the beginning of my story," she whispered, clenching her fists tightly, ready to face whatever came next. The murmurs in the chapel grew louder, a cacophony of shock and disbelief, woven with the familiar threads of sympathy. Sarah could feel every gaze piercing her, an ocean of emotions swirling around her. But amid the chaos, she craved silence, the kind that would let her sift through the raw ache ringing in her chest. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, each pulse a reminder of the pain and betrayal she was facing. How could Mark do this? And why Mia? The questions flooded her mind, but clarity was emerging, brushing aside the haze of confusion. Mark looked desperate, like he was about to break apart. "Sarah, please. I never meant to hurt you." Then why didn't you tell me?" She shot back, her voice surfacing above the growing noise. "What made you think I couldn't handle the truth?" The words escaped her like arrows, sharp and pointed. She could see Linda shifting uncomfortably, the weight of her revelation hanging heavily on both of them. "I thought," Mark stammered, his eyes flickering between her and the ground. "I thought I could handle it myself. That it was just a mistake I could erase. But in reality, I was just running from the truth." Running. The words stung deep within her. Running was precisely what they both had been doing, only she had been running toward love and trust, while he had sprinted away from honesty. The betrayal twisted like a knife, yet here she was, standing her ground, refusing to let his cowardice drown her. "We had dreams, Mark," she exclaimed, her voice cracking under the weight of emotion. "We talked about forever, and now look where we are." The words tasted salty on her lips, the inevitable tears threatening to fall. "All that feels like a lie now." There was a moment of stillness. The crowd fell willingly into a hush, suspended between her painful truth and Mark's desperation. She could feel their breath, anticipation heavy in the air. "Do you even love me?" she pressed, her heart aching at the necessary question. It felt like the final stone in the structure of their relationship, ready to topple everything they had built. The fear of his answer rose like bile in her throat. Mark's face paled, as if the words had physically drained him. "I never stopped loving you, Sarah. But I also made a terrible mistake. I lost myself for a moment. I thought it wouldn't hurt you if I stayed silent. And yet here we are," she replied, each word dripping with disappointment. "This hurts more than anything you could have said. You could have chosen honesty, the one thing that might have saved us." A flicker of recognition passed over his face, guilt mingled with regret. She took a step back, a wave of realization crashing over her. This wasn't just about Mark and Mia, it was about her reclaiming her own narrative, her own strength. "I can't do this anymore, Mark," she finally whispered, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "I deserve more than this. I need to be around people who see my worth, not just my love. Even if it means rebuilding from the ground up." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words and untold feelings. Sarah turned to Linda, who looked at her with something that almost resembled pride. A future unfurling before her, one where she faced her own truths without the shadows of betrayal looming over her. As she walked away from the gathered crowd, leaving Mark behind, new questions arose. What would life look like without him? Could she find her way back to joy? And would she dare to open her heart again, not just to love, but to herself? With each step, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter, but new uncertainties echoed in her mind. The path ahead was hers, but that didn't mean it would be easy. As she took a deep breath of fresh air outside the chapel, she felt a glimmer of hope. "This is my story now," she thought, looking up at the wide-open sky. The freedom tasted like possibility, and it filled her with a fresh resolve. Yet in the stillness, another realization struck her. If she could choose to free herself from the shadows of her past, what else might she discover about herself that she never knew? The sun had set, but the cool breeze against Sarah's skin felt invigorating as she walked away from the chapel. The whispers from inside still clawed at her, swirling in her memory like a stubborn echo. She paused to collect herself, wiping away the remaining tears that had threatened to spill. Amid the turmoil, she felt that tiny seed of resolve growing in the depths of her heart. She glanced back at the chapel, its warm lights contrasting sharply with the questions swirling inside her. She had come here today to honor her mother, but instead, she felt her world spinning like a carousel out of control. Mia, Mark, betrayal, it all mixed together into a confusion that threatened to drown her. But as she looked up at the sky, a sliver of clarity pierced through, whispering that perhaps this was the moment she had to step into her power. With every step toward the parking lot, Sarah drew in a deep breath. Her friends, her true friends, had always been there. They were waiting in a cozy, dimly lit diner not far from the chapel. She needed them now more than ever. They would understand. As she climbed into her car, she could feel the weight of loss behind her, but there was also a flicker of light promising new beginnings ahead. When she entered the diner, the sound of cheerful laughter enveloped her. The familiar smell of coffee and bacon hit her senses, grounding her back into reality. Linda was seated at a booth, her eyes widening as she spotted Sarah. "There you are," Linda exclaimed, jumping to her feet and wrapping Sarah in a tender hug. "I was worried about you." Sarah felt her heart swell with gratitude. "I needed to get away from," she gestured vaguely, the pain still fresh, but her voice steadier now. "The chaos. All those people, they just don't get it," Linda said as they slid into the booth. "They don't know the real story." "And it's not theirs to know," Sarah replied, finding strength in her words. "I'm just tired of pretending that everything is fine when it's not." The waitress approached with a warm smile, her notepad ready. "What can I get you? Coffee? Pie?" "Coffee, please," Sarah said, feeling the urge for warmth washing over her. "And maybe some pie too?" As the waitress walked away, Linda leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Have you thought about what you want to do next? I mean, with Mark and everything?" Sarah hesitated. The truth is, she had been letting the questions whirl inside her mind, but hadn't settled on any answers. I think I want to reclaim my narrative, but I'm scared. I don't know who I am without him. Think of it as an adventure, Linda encouraged, her eyes shining with excitement. You get to explore the real you. The Sarah before the pain. The idea sparked something in Sarah, an eagerness to step beyond the hurt. What if I discovered things I don't like about myself? Then you change them or accept them. It's okay to be flawed. It's part of being human, Linda said, resting a reassuring hand over Sarah's. You get to choose your story moving forward. Just imagine if this was the beginning of a new chapter. As moments passed, the conversation flowed. Laughter began to bubble up again, slicing through the heavy air hanging around Sarah. Each shared story, each reminiscence, felt like a piece of her heart stitching itself back together. Yet, even with this lightness, nagging doubts still loomed. How would she face Mark if he reached out? Would she even want to? And what about Mia? The realization hit her. A shift had begun, but there were still many steps left to take. Are you okay? Linda asked, interrupting Sarah's train of thought. You look deep in thought again. I'm just trying to figure things out. There's still part of me that feels lost. What if I can't let go of the past? Linda's expression softened. You'll find your way, I promise. Just remember, even the darkest nights will lead to a new dawn. Sarah nodded, digesting those words. She felt the hope stirring within her, yet the echo of uncertainty remained. What would this new chapter look like? The waitress returned with their coffee, setting it down on the table with a warm smile. But as Sarah reached for her cup, her phone buzzed violently on the table. The screen lit up with a message from Mark. Her heart raced. Did she have the strength to confront him when he came calling? As she read the message, a mixture of fear and anticipation coursed through her. Helen's words echoed in her mind, but she had made her first step. Whatever Mark had to say, it wouldn't decide her worth. But as she hit read on the message, she was filled with dread and curiosity. What did he want now? And would she be strong enough to respond? Sarah stared at her phone, the screen bright against the dim light of the diner. The message from Mark loomed there, a tiny portal to everything she'd been wrestling with. She felt her breath catch in her throat. What if he apologized? What if he wanted to explain? The mere idea sent a wave of nausea through her. Hey, Linda's voice broke through the fog. What does it say? Sarah hesitated, turning her phone toward Linda, afraid to let go of the grip it had on her heart. The words were short, almost mechanical. Can we talk? I need to explain. Sarah, you don't owe him anything, Linda replied firmly. If he wanted to explain, he shouldn't have let it get this far. I know, she wanted to say, but the desire to hear Mark's voice tugged at her. It was a twisted string of familiarity, pulling her back even as she strived to move forward. Maybe it's not about what I owe him, Sarah finally said. Maybe it's about what I need to know. Linda nodded slowly, her support unwavering. Just promise me you'll think of yourself first. Rethinking the moment, Sarah tried to breathe through the turmoil inside her. Could this conversation bring closure, or would it simply deepen her wounds? Her mind raced through the memories, every shared laugh, the warmth of his embrace before settling on those stark images of betrayal. The waitress returned, balancing 2 slices of pie and steaming cups. Here you go, ladies. Nothing like a bit of sugar to sweeten your night, huh? The distraction helped. As Sarah took her first bite, the sweet and tart flavor burst in her mouth, grounding her momentarily in comfort. But after the initial sweetness faded, the weight of Mark's message resumed its grip. Are you going to respond? Linda asked, casually pushing her plate away. The hint of concern in her eyes was unmistakable. I think I need to. Before she could change her mind, her fingers moved over the screen. What time? She replied, her heart thudding loud in her ears. As she hit send, a tidal wave of anxiety washed over her. Was she doing the right thing? What if this only opened old wounds? But as Sarah looked up, she met Linda's gaze, searching for reassurance. Her friend offered a small smile, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Just then, her phone buzzed again. Mark's reply. Now? At the park? Please. Sarah frowned. The park. The place where their laughter had once spilled like sunshine. It felt right and wrong all at once. What do you think? Sarah asked, her eyes wide with uncertainty. Do you think you can handle it? No pressure. Just let him talk, and you listen. You decide how to feel afterward. Okay. That simple word felt heavy on her tongue. With determination settling in her chest, Sarah leaned back. I can do this. I need to do this. Minutes passed with her heart racing, each tick of the clock drawing closer to what felt like the edge of a cliff. She felt fragile, yet strong beneath the weight of looming confrontation. Do you want me to go with you? Linda offered, leaning closer. No. This is something I have to do on my own. With a deep breath, Sarah stood up, pushing her plate away. Navigating the mix of emotions swirling inside her, she felt raw and exposed. Taking one last glance at Linda, she grabbed her bag, feeling the coolness of the leather against her fingers. Call me after, Linda urged, squeezing her arm. Whatever happens, I'm here for you. As Sarah stepped outside, the night air hit her like a rush of cold water. She felt alive and terrified all at once. The park loomed ahead, shadows stretching under flickering streetlights as she walked, her heart echoing each step. When she arrived at the park, the night deepened around her, the silence thick and filled with everything unspoken. There he was, hands shoved nervously into his pockets, shoulders hunched as if bracing himself for a storm. Sarah, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. It was time to unearth the truth, to peel back the layers of hurt and clarity. She stood tall, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Let us talk. But as he opened his mouth, the truth hung between them, fragile like a breath. What would he say? Could she handle it? And would she finally find the answers she craved? Sarah, Mark repeated, his voice still trembling with uncertainty. Her heart raced, the familiar beat competing with the chaos of emotions swirling inside her. The moonlight cast a pale glow on Mark's face, revealing tension etched in his features. She threw a quick glance at the ground, the weight of unspoken words heavy in the air. Do you want to say something, or, she started, her voice faltering, or should I? He inhaled deeply, and for a moment, she wondered if he was searching for words or courage. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he finally managed. The words felt flimsy, inadequate against the gravity of their situation. Didn't he mean for what to go this far? Sarah's frustration spilled over. She had wrestled with her emotions too long to let him sidestep the issue now. The lies? The betrayal? Or whatever excuse you have for seeing her. Mark winced. I was stupid. It was a mistake. I ended things before it got serious, but I love you. The phrase struck her a sharp jab that dug deeper than she expected. Love. Did love even matter now? She swallowed hard, sending grief and anger battling down her throat. Then why did you break the trust we had? Was it love that led you to her? He shook his head, his expression pained. I thought I could handle both. I wanted to have it all, but I messed up. This was the moment, the one that could either open a door to healing or slam it shut forever. She felt her skin grow colder as the realization sunk in. He wanted her compassion, her forgiveness. But how could she give that when inner turmoil brewed like a storm? Can we just go back to how things were? He asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Back to what? She challenged, almost incredulous. To pretending nothing happened? To you tripping over your own lies? It doesn't work that way, Mark. His silence hung heavy between them. The park felt like a spectator of their pain as the stars twinkled like indifferent bystanders. Her heart ached with memories of happier times, his laughter, the warmth of his touch, but those recollections felt distant now, submerged under the weight of his choices. Sarah, he started, stepping closer, I regret everything. I want us to find a way back. Please, just let me explain. The rawness of his plea pulled at her heartstrings. But could she withstand the weight of another explanation? She looked deep into his eyes, searching for sincerity amid the shadows of deceit. And then it hit her. The questions swirling in her mind weren't just about forgiveness. They were about self-discovery, about what she truly wanted for herself. Mark, I need to know if you're willing to fight for us. Her voice softened as she took a step back, an invisible boundary forming between them. Because if we're going to heal, you need to take ownership of your actions. It can't always be about you wanting me back. This is about both of us. He exhaled sharply, a flicker of understanding dancing in his eyes. I'll fight for us. I swear. Just give me a chance. But doubt stirred inside her. Could she trust him again? Was it foolish to think they could rebuild on such shaky ground? Or, maybe, the real question was, could she trust herself to forgive? The air hung thick with uncertainty, their breaths mingling in the cool night. Time slowed, each second stretching painfully as they stood there. You need to prove it's not just words. She felt a mixture of anger and resolve building in her. She wouldn't be the one to bear the weight of his choices alone. Then I will, he promised, determination creeping into his voice. I'll show you. I'll spend every day earning your trust back. As she caught a glimpse of conviction in his eyes, it felt like both a spark of hope and a shroud of fear. The path ahead was murky, but one thing was clear. It wouldn't be easy, and it would require both of them to truly work towards healing. But amidst the uncertainty, another question began to nag at her. Was she ready to take that leap into the unknown? Sarah, wait. Mark's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. Before we go further, there's something else I need to tell you. Her heart skipped a beat, anticipation slicing through her like a knife. What more could he possibly reveal? Mark's eyes shimmered with something more than just dread. It was as if years of uncertainty had finally settled in him, and the weight of what he carried was heavier than any of the lies he'd spun. He took a deep breath, his chest rising sharply as if bracing himself against an impending storm. Sarah, this isn't just about me, it's about what's been going on with you too, he said, voice steadying, but still containing the undercurrent of anxiety. You've been distant, and I thought maybe you weren't feeling the same way about us anymore. What do you mean? Her pulse quickened, confusion mixed with a surge of anger. Was he blaming her now? She felt the cold air wrap tightly around her, her body trembling as she awaited his response. His gaze dropped, the moonlight casting shadows across his face, deepening the lines of worry etched there. I found out something about the funeral, he began, almost in a whisper. Your mom's funeral, Sarah. I overheard your dad talking about a fight, something he kept from us both. Her stomach knotted at the mention of her mother. What does that have to do with anything, Mark? If you're bringing up my family's issues, this isn't the time, just listen. He interrupted, voice rising slightly, begging for her attention. He mentioned that your mom wasn't the person everyone thought she was. There were secrets, things that could change everything you thought you knew about her. I didn't want to say anything before you were ready. Shock stunned her into silence. Memories of her mother flooded her mind, images of a woman devoted, a protector, the ever-strong figure who had raised her. The idea that there were hidden layers felt like layers of ice cracking beneath her feet. What are you saying? She barely managed to ask. Your mom had a part of her life that was messy. It all came out when your dad was devastated, and he spilled all he could take in that moment, Mark said, his face strained with concern. I thought you should decide if you wanted to know. I didn't want to push you into that grief on top of everything else. She felt dizzy. Her head swirled with doubt and disbelief. What was he really saying? If it was true, what else had she been blind to? The trust she once had in her family felt shaking under the weight of uncertainty. All I want is for you to be prepared, to know your mom wasn't perfect. She was human. Just like us, he said softly. You deserve honesty, even if it hurts. Tears brimmed in her eyes. She'd been left vulnerable, reeling from the betrayal she felt in her relationship, and here was another revelation that threatened to break her down even further. It felt like the ground had shifted under her as she faced the shadows of her mother's life. Why tell me now? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. You still have betrayed me, Mark. You still chose to hide things. I thought you were strong enough to handle it. And I thought I could prove I'm not just a liar. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could find a way through all this together. His gaze bore into her, pleading for understanding. But as she stood there, grief swirling in her chest, the moment felt painfully familiar. One betrayal layered over another, and she wasn't sure how to navigate through it without losing herself. The thought of unveiling her mother's truth alongside her own heartbreak felt like a treacherous path to walk. "Mark, I don't know what to do. This is all too much," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. "Then let us start somewhere small," he urged. "You might not be ready to forgive me yet, but what if we started with the truth? I'll go with you, wherever you want to go together, through all of this." Together? But what did that really mean? As she looked up, the moonlit sky seemed to echo her turmoil, stars blinking like distant promises. Would she choose to piece together these shattered truths? Would uncovering the past allow her to find a way forward with the man standing in front of her? "Sarah, what do you want?" he asked, hope lingering in the serious timbre of his voice. Could she find the courage to face both her mother's and her own hidden truths? The answer felt like a gaping question mark hanging over them, filled with uncertainty. Chills ran down Sarah's spine as she processed Mark's words. The night was heavy, draped in silence that pressed against her chest. It felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss of unknown emotions. Just a few moments ago, they were discussing their relationship, and now they were deep in a sea of her mother's concealed past. Together, she muttered, almost as if testing the word, rolling it around her tongue. Could she trust that word? The hint of warmth in his voice felt conflicted against the cold reality of what he had revealed. It echoed the very foundations of her upbringing of love and betrayal, entwined like the roots of a great tree, so intertwined that pulling one out could bring the whole thing tumbling down. "Mark, what if the truth is worse than I expect?" She spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "What if my mother really was hiding something terrible? What if I'm not who I thought I was?" His eyes met hers, full of understanding. "Maybe the truth is messy, but it's still your truth. You deserve to own it," he said gently. "And I'll be right here with you." She searched his face, yearning for some kind of assurance. But doubts clouded her mind. One moment he had asked her to forgive, but this new reality combined with her heartache had thrown her into turmoil. She felt tethered to conflicting emotions, as if a storm were raging just beneath her surface. "Will this bring us closer, or tear us apart?" she finally asked, her voice trembling under the weight of her query. "I don't know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "But hiding from it isn't the answer. Maybe knowing will lead to healing, or at least understanding what came before us." "Understanding," she echoed, wishing she could grasp it as easily as he seemed to. Mark stepped closer, bridging the gap between them. "What if we started with your dad? We can talk to him, ask him what really happened. If we have questions, we should go to the source. Do you actually think he'll want to share that with us?" She shook her head, doubt bubbling at the edges of her voice. "What if he shuts down? What if I'm not ready to hear whatever dark secrets he has been keeping?" "Then we find another way," Mark replied. "But you won't know unless you try." Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes, imagining the conversation with her father looming like a mountain before her. The memories of her mother shimmered in the background, leaving her caught between affection and apprehension. Could she truly bear to leap into this chasm of truth? "Okay," she exhaled, the word breaking through the anxiety gripping her. "If we start with him, we begin to unravel." The thought of confronting her father brought a fresh wave of fear, but determination flickered inside her. She wasn't ready to let the shadows of her past dictate her future. The path ahead might be daunting, but together with Mark, perhaps there was hope to heal old wounds. "Together," she whispered, locking eyes with him, gaining strength from the connection. "And whatever we uncover, we'll face it. One step at a time," Mark promised. Just as hope began to flicker in her heart, uncertainty smothered it. They stood in a moment of silence, heavy yet hopeful, crystallizing their commitment to tackle the past. But that tiny spark ignited a question in Sarah's mind. What if her father's truth brought out something within her that she feared to uncover? How could she venture into a realm of revelation that might change everything she held dear? As they broke free from the spell of the night, Sarah felt the stirrings of courage deep within her. She could confront her family's legacy, even if it meant revisiting grief. But would unearthing these hidden truths bring her closer to understanding her mother, or drive her further away from the glowing memories she had cherished? With the future trembling like a tightrope above a chasm of unknown emotions, Sarah realized something crucial. Sometimes, the past had a way of catching up. But could she take that first step into the darkness without losing sight of the light? The sun rose slowly over Maplewood, casting hues of orange and gold across the sky. Sarah stood at her mother's grave once more, the air fresh with the promise of a new day. Today felt different, a turning point in her journey. The weight of the secrets she had uncovered still lingered, but with each passing moment, clarity began to replace confusion. Mark stood beside her, his presence a mixture of support and fragility. He had come to terms with his actions, and while the road to forgiveness stretched long before them, the first steps had been taken. They had faced the truths of their past together, unraveling the tangled threads that had bound them to pain, forgiveness, and vulnerability. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, glancing toward her with a question in his eyes that reached deep into her heart. Sarah inhaled deeply, feeling the cool breeze against her skin. "I think so." Her voice was steadier than it had been in weeks. "But we have a long way to go." With her father's revelations weighing heavily in their minds, the upcoming conversation seemed monumental. The questions they'd prepared lingered like clouds ready to burst. Sarah's mind danced between fear and determination, but she knew there was no avoiding the truth any longer. As they walked away from the grave, Sarah felt a sense of resolve blossom within her. Her mother's spirit wouldn't be forgotten in the unraveling of darker truths. Instead, Sarah realized it was time to redefine how those memories would shape her future. Days passed, and Sarah leaned into the support of friends and family. The diner became her refuge, filled with laughter that punctuated moments of vulnerability. Linda remained by her side, encouraging her to embrace her strength. "You'll find your way through," she assured Sarah over cups of steaming coffee. And with every shared story and every laugh, Sarah's heart began to heal ever so slightly. Eventually, the day arrived when she would sit down with her father. It was a cold afternoon, gray clouds hanging low in the sky, a fitting backdrop for the gravity of the conversation that lay ahead. The dining table felt almost sterile, an echo of old memories wrapped in a tense current of uncertainty. Would he allow her to understand, to navigate the labyrinth of his own undisclosed truths? With Mark's encouraging squeeze of her hand, Sarah took a deep breath and motioned for her father to sit. "We need to talk, Dad." He looked up, surprise and anxiety dancing in his eyes. "About?" "About Mom and everything that's come to light." Her pulse raced, but as she spoke, her voice gained momentum. "I want to know the truth. No more hiding." "I didn't want to burden you," he said, the words heavy with regret. "Your mother was strong and loved fiercely, but she had secrets, Sarah. Her past isn't easy to share. Maybe it's time." Her voice trembled, fueled by both apprehension and the need for clarity. "I'm ready to face it. I need to understand who she truly was." As he began to speak, Sarah leaned forward, ready to embrace whatever reality lay ahead. The stories poured out, filled with shadows yet illuminated by love's essence. She felt the weight of her past shift, a profound understanding developing within her. Afterward, Sarah and Mark walked hand in hand away from the gathering, their spirits lifted despite the heaviness of the revelations. They had faced the storms together and emerged with a new sense of purpose. Love might not suffocate pain, but it could nevertheless coexist with it. Back at the park, under the same moonlight that had witnessed their confessions, Sarah turned to Mark. "We've survived this. Together. And we'll keep fighting," he replied, a glint of hope shining in his eyes. With each heartbeat, she felt the burdens slowly lifting, replaced by a determination that surged within her. The journey ahead wouldn't always be clear, but with the desire for truth ignited within her, she was empowered. "Let us promise to keep talking, no more hiding." She felt a radiant smile break across her face, a joy she thought had vanished forever. "Absolutely," he vowed, taking her hands in his, a new tenderness blooming between them. "We'll write our story together." As they walked beneath the stars, a profound warmth wrapped around her heart. Sarah would carve out her narrative on her terms, one filled with honesty, resilience, and most importantly, love. The past would always be part of her tapestry, but every thread woven would shine brighter than before, promising hope. This was her moment. The beginning of a beautiful chapter, as open as the skies above. And then, she turned toward her future, emboldened and ready, knowing full well she had the strength to face whatever came next. Today, she was alive. Today, she was free. If you're inspired by Sarah's journey to truth and healing, make sure you subscribe immediately to the channel and don't miss any of the upcoming exclusive stories. You need to support her journey by leaving a like now to help us reach more people with these empowering tales. And be sure to comment your thoughts and feelings about her transformation below. I want to hear from you. Also, don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring journey. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions, so let us build a community of hope together.